April Chapman, where we discuss all things social, cultural, political, and theological from a biblical perspective. Today, I have a very special treat for you. We are going to be reacting to the most infamous conservative radical debate between Amanda Seales and about 20 or so Black conservatives. Now, this content is it is a textbook case in how conservatives need to do one of two things. One, I applaud them for sitting down with such an insane, crazy, deranged, and evil individual. Y'all, something is wrong with this woman. She is unhinged and unwell. And I'm not saying that as some sort of medical diagnosis. I'm making the assertion based on her behavior and her character and the way she engages with other human beings. Now, conservatives normally don't have an issue defending their worldview or their positions. The problem is we don't really get our muscles trained. They're really not trained, and we don't get the exercise necessary because it is rare to find liberals and progressives that are willing to sit down and engage on so many topics. So today, what I want to do is I want to react to the Jubilee Roundtable debate. I don't know what you call it, but I'm only, because of time and because of copyright issues, I can't really react to all of it. So what I've done is I've just pulled a few clips for us to engage with, and I want to do it, one, to highlight and celebrate all of the conservatives who participated in this event, but also to help us strengthen our arguments. One thing I wanted to note, that what you will notice is that she considers herself a radical, which is a new remixed name for a progressive or a leftist or a liberal. These people don't have joy. They don't have joy and they don't have peace. I mean, how can you have peace when you are a perpetual victim and you major in grievance? You wake up with grievance on your mind and your entire existence hinges upon you being angry, grieved, upset, and angered over something. Because that is the vast majority of how you spend your time, you don't know what it's like to cultivate joy. You don't even know how to find joy in the simple things in life because you are constantly focused on things that don't matter and things that you can't change and control, and you're not spending any sort of constructive time or energy focusing on the things that you can change and the things that you can control, such as your outcomes, right? So they dwell in the past because that's all they have, but they don't have the tools in order to look forward to the future and then to pull from those tools and to then do something together to change the trajectory of their own lives. So let's get this set up. And we're going to react to claim number one. And for copyright reasons, you guys, I have not, or I will not, I should say, we're not going to be playing video. You're going to hear audio and you're going to see still shots because my channel is my bread and butter and I'm not about to get a copyright strike or claim because y'all want to see Amanda Seales be super animated. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into this clip.
My first claim is it is undeniable that reparations are just and necessary.
All right, reparations, fair, necessary. My question would be, who's going to get it? Why would they get it? And how long are we going to sit here focusing on trying to get reparations? It's been how many years since slavery? 150 years, 1865? Whenever there's a real thing that this country wants to do, they do it. Stop Asian hate. Okay, there's a problem with the Asian hate. Let's draft a bill, sign it, and it's done. Anything that needs to be done is done. With us, it's a carrot they dangle in front of us that they don't really want to do. And it's not going to help. We need education. Oh, it's not going to help. No, it's not. We need education. Getting a check from the government is not going to do that. And we need proper education. A lot of us go to these institutions where we're not really prepared, we're not really focused, and we don't get things that'll help us in the real world. So if you want to help Black people, a check from the government, from our tax dollars is going to get raised, because let's be clear, everybody in here is black. We all American. We all got to pay taxes. It'll go to that. So I don't really see how this is going to help us at all.
Okay. Well, first I'll start with it will help on even just a moral level. The reality is that the United States has become very comfortable with the fact that it does not consider black people equal.
Okay, so she makes an assertion. What I've done is I've allowed Anthony Brian Logan, shout out to him, an amazing content creator here on the YouTube. He argued and brought up some points, and she did as well. And she said that she believes that reparations is going to help on a moral level because this country doesn't view Black Americans as human beings. Now, I don't know how does she make this assertion, on what basis she is making this assertion. I don't know if she's appealing to language within the Constitution that would lead an ignorant person to believe that they were talking about Black people in terms of their human essence, in their human essence or worth, or for taxation reasons. But that's neither here or there. Here's the issue. The fact that she believes that there are people, or should I say not people, the nation, right? The government, the United States as a country doesn't view Black Americans as humans or people. The question I want to present or ask Amanda is, who cares? Like, so what? Why do you care so much? Why do you need the love and affection and the care and concern from a people group who you say, by your own admission, hates you? What is it that you want them to recognize about you that God has not already spoken about you? Now, I'm bringing in an epistemology from my worldview, which is I believe the Bible. And I believe that I am an image bearer created in the image of God. And I have a basis and a reason for why I believe that. I don't know if this individual she's not a Christ follower, and I know she is not a Christian. I would probably put her in the atheist category. But for the purpose of this conversation, my question to Amanda is, so what? Let's just say and assume that there are all of these people within the government that they don't view Black Americans as human beings. How do we account then for all of the Black Americans who are wildly successful, including yourself, despite the fact that there is this sentiment that is held, this deeply held presupposition by these other people that you are not a human? Why do you care? Why does that matter to you, what other people think or believe about you? And then the next question is, because you assume, believe, or feel that they feel this way about you, why do you believe that you were owed money and compensation for this deeply held presupposition that's an assumption that you assume other people make? I know that was really wordy. But the point I'm trying to drive home and get you guys to understand is that the moral argument falls flat because our Constitution already includes the fact that all men are created equal. We are all deserving of value, dignity, and respect. But my question to her is, why is she tying a dollar amount or value to this essence and dignity and worth? And why does she believe that the country today needs to pay that to us? Because what do we do with people who say, well, I don't believe that people view us this way? Well, first of all, how do you approve this? This entire argument is silly. Her saying on a moral level, they just need to give us the money. If she had said, on a moral level, the slaves who were harmed were deserving to be were deserving to receive some sort of restitution, that would make sense to me. Because in that case, you have two parties. One party that was actually guilty of enacting an injustice, and then the other party that's on the receiving end of the injustice. If she had rooted her moral argument in we've got someone who was offended and someone who was doing the offending, and for that reason to make those people whole, I'm not even gonna fight her on that. That is true. But here's the problem when you try to use that as the basis of your argument for why we need reparations today. I've covered this in a previous video. None of us alive today have been directly harmed by a slave system that has been enacted on us by other people who are alive today. Now, an argument can be made that slavery is still happening in the world today, but there are no Black Americans alive today that are a slave, and there are no white people or Indians or other Black people. Well, you know what? Technically, that's not true. What I was gonna say technically there are no slaves today, but there are. There are ideological slaves today. She's actually one of them. She is an actual ideological slave because she is enslaved to the concept of being a perpetual victim. And you cannot trust a perpetual victim. You cannot trust them. You just can't. But to further solidify the point that I am making, if she's going to use the moral argument that it's just the right thing to do, I would agree, but on what basis? That's where we would disagree. I would disagree that there is a moral basis that reparations are owed to the descendants of slaves, because today's descendants are too many generations removed from the actual harm, and they are not experiencing any sort of direct or measurable harm as a result of the slavery of their ancestors, because we can prove that one generation and even two generations removed from slavery, those people were doing better than many of us are doing today. And we can have a discussion on, well, April, what do you mean by they were doing better? Well, we can look at outcomes. If they had intact families and they had low out of wedlock birth rates, they had low debt, they had skills that they could actually use to add value to the marketplace. We can make an argument. I actually can make an argument that my ancestors post-slavery owned more land than I do today. There were many Black Americans who were landowners, and we can also make an argument based on the two Homestead Acts that were passed post-slavery that, granted, it was a small amount, but around 5,000 people took advantage of the Homestead Acts and went and settled the 160 acres of land that was offered out west. I've covered this in previous videos. So when she says, well, reparations, it's undeniable, it is just and necessary, I don't disagree with the premise of the question. What I disagree with is the conclusions that she draws from that statement. Actual slaves receiving reparations would have been just and would have been and were necessary. And a form of that, we can argue, well, it wasn't, widespread and everybody didn't get it. No, but there was something done. We just don't want to deal with the truth and the fact that cowardice and allowing ourselves to be subjugated by the same people who had just subjugated us before is the reason why we didn't lay claim to what was rightfully ours. We need to own that. That is on us, because there is no way that I'm going to be an emancipated slave and in the same generation that I'm alive, I'm going to allow some crazy Dixiecrat, Democrat, crazy white folks subjugate me again. Especially when I already know what it's like to be owned a piece of property and be a slave. That's not going to happen again. I will kill you for my freedom before I die for it. If more of us would have had that mindset, things would have looked and panned out much differently. So that claim number one, how I would answer that is we don't need to fight these liberals about reparations being just and necessary. It is, but the question is, are you gonna get it? Are you gonna get it? You may be a bona fide descendant of a slave. I'm not even gonna argue on that point. The question is, are you going to get it? And since we know the answer is no, my next question is, how long are you going to whine and cry and beg to the United States government for something that you're never going to get? Because I can tell you, the penny's running out. The penny has already run out. Everybody is fatigued by your grievance and your groaning and your whining and the begging. Because what it is doing, it is taking time and attention and just mental fortitude and energy that you could be exerting doing something way more productive, getting better outcomes. But instead, you're spending all your time laser focused on the hope and the possibility that this government might give you something, as opposed to you saying, while I'm waiting for what I think I might rightfully deserve, how productive am I being and what am I producing? What are my outcomes? What do I have to show for it? Since the vast majority of people who are whining and crying on this side of this discussion about these reparations, they're doing nothing but being professional grievance hustlers. This is their grift, to keep the grievance and the condemnation of white America perpetually on the forefront of everybody's mind. And to now, the people who may have been allies on your side at one point, the grievances run out. They're tired of hearing about it. And they're figuring out, they're trying to sit in here trying to figure out, what are you going to do? What else is there? Do you have anything else in your stick to pull from? Because this act is getting tired. We're ready for a new scene. We're ready for a new act. That is the question that many Americans have. And it's the question that I would ask her. I will concede the point that it is undeniable that reparations are just and necessary. But the question is, just and necessary to whom and by whom? Because the argument that people alive today are going to pay you when you've suffered nothing makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. So let's let her continue.
Shows that in many ways that I'm sure we will discuss over the course of today. But ultimately, there has not been a committed, concerted effort to shifting the mindset around the use of Black people as a labor force in this nation back when it was slavery, now in the use of slavery as slave labor in prisons. So,
yep, this is a false equivalency. When she brings up, the slave labor in prisons, the question that we also need to ask ourselves is, are the people in prison, are they in there for unjust reasons? Like, did someone just round them up and put them in prison, and then as a result, their labor is being exploited? Because listen, we can make an argument that the industrial prison complex is a problem, and then we can also make an argument that violent crime is a problem and that people are ending up in jail because of the proximate cause of their actions. Like, they're doing something, they're committing crimes, and that's how they're ending up in jail. Because it ain't just Black folks that commit crimes. Now, granted, we commit a disproportionate amount of those crimes, which is why we find ourselves disproportionately on the other side of the prison cell, like behind the bars. But the idea that the labor that's being exploited in the prisons, that may be true, but I've never been to prison. And I don't fear, or nor do I believe that I am ever in danger of being round up and put in a prison where my labor is going to be exploited. So this is an irrelevant point. Why are you bringing up the prison industrial complex. If she's bringing it up to say, well, slavery still happens, I could easily say, well, you're right. Slavery still happens because I believe you are a slave. So now what? Does this move the conversation forward regarding, are reparations just and necessary? And if they are, who are they just and necessary for? Bringing up the prison population is irrelevant because we are just not wholesale locking up Black folks for no reason. These Black folks are absolutely committing crimes. And that is a truth claim that people like Amanda never want to deal and engage with.
On a basic cultural level, reparations are an act of repair. They are an effort to say, our bad, we see you now.
See, there it is again. It is the obsession with being seen. Once again, my question still stands. Why do you need these people who you claim hate you so much to see you? Why do you need affirmation and approval from these people? Do you not within yourself inherently already know that your creator God, you were born with inherent value, dignity, and respect? Why is that not enough for you? Why do you need the racist white people who you claim are subjugating you and are hunting you down to see you and to acknowledge this about you? I argue that the reason why she needs it, because she doesn't believe that about herself. Why? She doesn't have an epistemological reason that she can appeal to as to where her value, dignity, essence, and worth comes from. As a Christian, I appeal to my creator, the God who created the heavens and the earth, and I don't look to other image bearers of any ethnic persuasion to give me the value, dignity, essence, and worth that I know I was born with and that I've been endowed with by my creator. When you cling to a godless worldview, this is where you end up seeing where the holes are. Because look what she appeals to for validation. She appeals to another image bearer. I appeal to God as creator for my validation. And so I don't find myself pigeonholed in a trap looking for another human to grant me something that only God can grant me. So I just thought that was interesting. She brings up the prison complex and then say, it's a form of repair. Once again, I agree. It's reparative or restorative to who, by whom, and for what? Because I being alive today, I am not in need of repair because no one has harmed or injured me. My mother is not in need of any sort of restoration or repair because no one has harmed or injured her. In the same vein, white people alive today do not owe or nor do they need to bow the knee to restore or repair some sort of perceived injustice that you claim they owe. They just don't.
We've seen that done with Japanese folks who were put in internment camps. We have seen that done with Jewish folks. We have seen that done even in the case of slave owners who received reparations.
Okay, so when she brings this up, this is a very valid point. But as a conservative, you need to know how to properly and rightfully engage with that truth claim. She is right. Japanese Americans who were interned in the last century, in the 20th century, were given payments of $20,000 each. But do you know the difference is? They received it in their lifetime while they were still alive because they were the actual on the receiving end of the harm. And it was legislatively done, meaning it was a bipartisan effort to say, we was trifling, we messed up. And so we can remunerate, right? They knew how many Japanese Americans were alive at the time that the reparations were given. It was measurable. They could calculate it, and it wasn't a lot of money. They got $20,000. So if your argument is, well, the Japanese got something, but we didn't, I would argue that we got more. We got infinitely more than $20,000. We did. The question is, would she recognize the two Homestead Acts, right, that overwhelmingly most Black Americans did not take advantage of because it was too hard? The two Homestead Acts that I'm referring to, let me get the dates. There were two Homestead Acts. You had a Homestead Act of 1866, and then you had the Homestead Act of 1862. No, 1866. That was the Southern Homestead Act. Let me give you some background and why. Here's the argument. If you're going to use the Japanese Americans for the whataboutism, well, they got it and we didn't get it. Okay, fine. These actual former slaves who were alive, this is what they were given. In 1866, Congress, they doubled down. This was the Second Homestead Act. The Southern Homestead Act, it was absolutely for freed slaves. 46 million acres of land in Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Louisiana, and Mississippi was set aside specifically for freed Black Americans. And in the spirit of real justice, it was actually set aside for white Union loyalists too. You know why? Because those white boys died for your freedom too. So in my opinion, if they were willing to shed blood, that bloodshed was infinitely more valuable than some land. So they absolutely deserved access to that land too. Now, here's how it went down. These Homestead Acts were very strategic because the government was literally offering Black families land and an opportunity for them to take economic control of their own destiny. And the conditions were simple. We're going to subdivide this land. You get 160 acres. All you got to do is go out there, develop that land, and in 5 years, it is yours. And you know, do you realize this is my argument? The shackle of slavery was still so tight and had gripped so many of these former slaves because less than 5,000 took advantage of it. And do you want to know some of the reasons? Oh, well, that land is it's just too hard. My thing is, you've been a slave your whole life. Ain't nothing harder or worse than being a slave. The least you could have done was challenge yourself and go out and take that land and say, I gotta at least try. I might fail, but at least I will try. My question is, why is it some of the white Union loyalists took advantage of it and some of the Black former slaves took advantage of it and they were successful, but how do we explain how the others were not? It's because of weakness and cowardice. It's the same weakness. Y'all ain't gonna like this. This one gonna hurt. This is gonna hurt and it's gonna sting, but it's supposed to. Slavery was never or has never been about ethnicity. We just hate those Africans so much that we're going to enslave them. How do we know this? Because Africans enslaved their own people and sold them to white Europeans, and it had nothing to do with the fact that they were Africans. Why? Because they're all Africans. They're just Africans of different tribes. It's always been the strong conquer the weak. That's it. If you are weak, you're going to get conquered. You're going to get subjugated. And this may hurt you, and it should embolden you to be like, I can't be weak like my forefathers and my predecessors, because it's a shame before God that many Africans allowed themselves to be captured and subjugated, as opposed to having the signs of power rise up within them and say, not today, and fight back. Indians, Native Americans here owned slaves. Black Americans on U.S. terra firma, U.S. soil, owned slaves. So you had whites were enslaved and whites owned slaves. Matter of fact, you had Cherokee Indians who fought on the side of the Confederates because they were like, wait a minute, we want to keep our slaves too. They owned slaves and fought for the Confederacy. So my question is, why aren't you appealing to certain Native American tribes saying y'all owe us reparations because you enslaved us? You know why? Because it ain't even about the slavery. It's about the fact that you are weak and you are a whiny beggar. And you are to be pitied, and you should be ashamed of yourselves, but you're not, because being out here, being a perpetual victim, makes you feel more special. And that's where you get your dignity and your worth from. But at the end of the day, people like me who are willing to go out and hunt and compete on the basis of our merit, and we say that you are weak and you deserve whatever crumbs that the master wants to shove to you from his table, because you ain't worth or good enough to do anything other than to be a beggar. That's all you'll ever be, is a beggar. So the question becomes, why is it that slavery wasn't about ethnicity? Because it was about the weak being conquered by the strong, irrespective of ethnic expression. And we know this to be true because white Europeans could not go into the interior of Africa and just go get them some slaves. They had to rely on other Africans of tribes that had conquered the weaker tribes to supply them with the inventory. There are some tribes in Africa that were never sold in the transatlantic slave because they just knew how to be on top and win. In the same way, you had blacks who were here from the get-go who owned other blacks. Why is it that the whites never conquered those blacks? How is it that when the troops came through Chubtown was preserved? The strong always conquer the weak. That's what it's always been about. But people like Amanda want to make it about ethnicity because I guess this is profitable for her, or it makes her feel better being an eternal victim. Maybe this is where she gets a sense of identity from, which makes no sense to me because her mother is an immigrant. So how is it that she managed to figure it out and be successful, all the while claiming that this nation is racist and it's a white supremacist system and black people just can't get ahead no matter what we do? Is anything ever our fault? Will we ever accept responsibility for the fact that this nation did everything in their power? They sent the Union Army. The Union Army occupied down here for 12 freaking years. How much protection did you want them to provide you? At what point were you going to stand on your own 2 feet and say, we got it, y'all go, we going to take care. We going to take care of these white Confederates, these Democrats. Oh, we got it. Y'all going up there, back up, and you run other parts of the country. How is it that white men and the Native American figured out that both of us can't occupy this land? The strong are going to conquer the weak. And there were times when the white man would get slaughtered, and then there were times when the Indian would get slaughtered. But at the end of the day, there can only be one winner. Someone is going to conquer the lesser or the weaker vessel. Someone's going to conquer the weaker vessel. And if you are unwilling to accept that and acknowledge that, you'll just be a perpetual victim. So what we're going to do now, let's let her finish. Actually, let me look at time. How much time do we have? Okay, we 35 minutes in. There are so many aspects of this conservative against the radical discussion that we can talk about, and we just simply don't have enough time to get to it in one video. I'll probably do other videos providing commentary to this, but at the end of the day, I want to applaud the conservatives who participated in this discussion, but I do believe we're nice. We're just too nice. Amanda needed someone to match her energy in terms of exposing her lies and her ignorance and calling her the weak, whiny, perpetual victim that she is. And to say that to someone may not be polite, but it is necessary, because until you call these people out and call them and tell them to their face, you are weak. You are still oppressed. You are still an ideological slave. And unless the signs of power arise within you and you recognize that you are free and you can get off this plantation anytime you want and flourish, until you realize that you can actually do that, you're going to continue to be miserable. You're going to continue to parrot these weak talking points, and the rest of us, we're going to leave you behind. And you might make money off of your grievance, but you're actually hurting your people, because nothing you say is going to empower them to rise up with a strength that only the good Lord can give them, and cause them to be great and to do great things. She's doing a disservice to the next generation who has to listen to this victimhood. There are no winners when you think like this. You're just a victim and a loser. And that's one reason why I wanted to highlight this. So I'll probably cover other aspects of this debate, but I'm curious to know, just on this claim number one, it's undeniable that reparations are just and necessary. I agree. But the question is, so what? Who are they owed to? It is just and it is necessary, but the question is it just and necessary to be paid to you? And if so, by whom? And if so, why? She's not going to be able to answer that, and neither are any other these wokety woke, blackety black, pro black justicians. They cannot answer that, because they know they have not been personally harmed by slavery, and they can't even say, psychologically what they did to our people kind of messed me up, and this why I can't get it together. Because I'm like, listen, there's too much proof and evidence to demonstrate that the rest of us are doing just fine, and that it is just something anemic and deficient in you. You need reparations. We don't. And since you need it and we don't, the question is, who do you think is going to give it to you? And if you find someone that's going to give it to you, then hey, go cash your check and go in peace. But the rest of us understand the reality of this. We understand the fiduciary roadblocks that make it untenable and impossible for it to happen. And the rest of us know enough history to know that this country has done more than enough to repair the people who were harmed then, and the fact that the signs of power didn't rise up in too many of them, because it's the same reason that led them to become subjugated in the first place, is weakness. The strong always overpower the weak. And so I'm curious to know, what do you guys think? What did you think of this episode, or should I say claim number one? Do you agree with Amanda, or do you agree with me? Like, you know what? Yes, it is just and necessary, but the question is, are you going to get it? And since we already know the answer to it, the answer is no. What should you or could you be doing instead? So until next time, you guys, stay bold, stay biblical, and above all else, stay unshakable. Grace and peace.